All right, it's 8 o'clock. We'll call to order the January 16th, 2025 Economic Development Authority meeting. That's first order of business. Molly, welcome in person. You were here virtual last month, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us what you're all about.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Molly Ruby. I'm the Associate Executive Director at the Elk River YMCA. I have been at the Elk River Y, well, I started long ago as a group fitness instructor when I was a stay-at-home mom, but then my family moved away, moved back. I did residential real estate and then went to work full-time for the Y in a leadership role 7 or 8 years ago. Many of you know Molly Hansen. It was the Molly Squared show over there until she moved on to the Y Association, and so I am essentially stepping into her spot with the EDA here, so thank you once again, and I also serve as a firefighter for the city of Elk River.
Well, welcome. All right, on to the election of officers.
Do you want to do a roll call just so Molly knows everybody?
Sure. Well, should we just go around the table? I'm Ken Giroux.
Brent O'Neill, City of Elk River.
Elizabeth Harvey.
Jacob Sanders, City of Becker.
Dan, Sherburne County.
Brian, Sherburne County.
Greta Stewart Crocker, Central Minnesota Community Foundation.
Candy Voller, American Heritage Bank.
Jared Johnson, Cargill.
Josh Mullen, City of Elk River.
Andrew Ellis, Commissioner.
Mitch Glines, planner with the county.
And Ryan Adolski, Commissioner. I know Molly.
Good.
Thank you, Ken.
Oh, thank you. On to the election of officers.
You want to kick us off on starting with the president? So I would nominate Ken Giroux to serve as our president again because he's done such a good job.
Second.
Oh boy.
That was a little quick.
Let's slow down, let's talk about it.
There are the nominations, other nominations, other nominations. Oh, no other nominations.
Do we need to vote on each individual seat or do we vote as a collective?
Have to do it one each.
All right, I would be looking for a motion for the nomination of Ken Giroux for chair for another year.
I. No, we already did the motion.
Yeah,
Now you want the
Oh.
second?
No, we just have to vote.
Just how about now?
Yeah, see, I'm not qualified.
That was strategic.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Vice chair, we have Andy. Was last year.
I would nominate Andy to continue on as our vice chair.
Something? Okay. Second on that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Treasurer, Todd's not here. Do we have a nomination for the treasurer for the new year?
I would nominate Todd as treasurer, unless someone else is interested to throw their hat in the ring.
It's a tough job.
Yeah, real tough.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
This next one's even.
The
tougher.
next one's even worse.
Secretary treasurer.
Yeah, sorry, anybody opposed to Todd being treasurer? No, all right. Assistant treasurer, because Todd needs help.
On that tough job.
Where the real work gets done.
All right, we need a nomination or a motion.
Who's our existing?
Jared.
Jared. Oh, Jared. I would nominate Jared to continue on as assistant treasurer.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Appointment of executive director.
I did miss secretary on there, Ken, so we do have to do a secretary too. Laura was a secretary last year.
I'm sorry, Laura.
Didn't mean to
That's
cut
a
you out
really
of the
tough
job.
Yeah, okay, well, we need a motion or nomination for the secretary for another year.
I would nominate Laura as a secretary.
I'd second that. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right, on to 5, appointment of the executive director.
I would nominate Brian Fleming as the executive director.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, on to the approval of the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Approval of the meeting minutes from November.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the official newspaper, which is the Elk River Star.
Is that the,
Not just the county board.
okay. So moved.
Get your name in there, Molly.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, take up those controversial ones.
Yeah, really, yeah. No, that's Star News.
Approval of the official depository, which is the Bank of Elk River.
Which also matches the county board.
I'll make a motion to approve, Elk River Bank as our official depository.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right, designate location of meetings to be the Sherburne County Boardroom. The table's a little quiet today.
Does it mean you're looking for them to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and opposed? No? Okay. Determining meeting dates, which has been attached. Any conflicts in there?
Same schedule, third Thursday of every month. We did skip June because it's Juneteenth that day. So if we need to have a meeting, we can always reschedule it. But we typically have 11 meetings a year, so that'd just be the one we missed this year.
Okay, motion on approving the meeting dates for 2025.
Make a motion, we accept the dates of the meeting.
By Laura.
I'll second.
All right, we got competition, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed. Discuss amendments to bylaws or enabling resolution. There were no changes.
Correct. It's just something we have to have on the agenda each year.
So we need a motion to stay with.
We don't even need a motion for that because
Oh, we
there's no
don't?
changes, no. Just something we have to have on the
Well-
agenda by bylaws.
That brings us down to business then. All right, today we have Stacy Marquette from the city of Princeton to give an update. Stacy, are you with us?
I am. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So I'll just start out maybe with a quick background on me, and then I'll just kind of go into our presentation. Brian, I do have a little slideshow. I don't know if you guys can see it or if he has it up.
We're working on
But
it.
anyway, so I'm Stacy Marquardt. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Princeton. I grew up on a farm in Mora, went to college and got my degree at Bemidji. I was with Wright County as the planner for a little over 17 years, and then I moved to the City of Princeton, been here for about 2.5 years. So just some quick facts on the City of Princeton. Some of this you might already know, but to be honest with you, I haven't ever presented to an EDA board yet, so bear with me. So our population in 2023 tipped over the 5,000 mark, which we are very excited about. We are currently at 5,388 for our current population. In 2020, just before I got here, we did become an age-friendly city. Our age-friendly group is a very active group in the community. Our goal is to make Princeton a place that you can stay here for your whole entire life, be born here all the way till passing, and have the amenities for each of those stages of your life. As you probably already know, we have some major events that we do every year. We partner with the Princeton Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism every year in the summer for the Rum River Festival and in the winter for Light Up Princeton. This year we moved Light Up Princeton to the fairgrounds. It's growing exponentially. We added a hot cocoa hut and some various different light features, so it's actually pretty cool this year. We do it on a donation basis, which is kind of neat, and the groups that work each night get half of those proceeds to their donation of choice. The Rum River Festival, we do have during the summer. It's usually the first weekend of June. Last year, as you probably know, we had the world's largest duck, which we're looking at doing again this year. That was a huge boost to our economy in this area. We had thousands and thousands of people from all over the United States, actually from all over the world. We had people flying in from other countries. Apparently, there's a following on this duck, but who knew? So let's get into a little bit of our actual development, what's going on around the Princeton area for businesses and residential development, things like that. Brian, if you wouldn't mind, yep, thank you. So a few years before I got here, we invested in a new business park. Since then, we've had some growth in there. Glenn Metalcraft or Element Group was our first large project that went into that development. They had their ribbon cutting grand opening this past year. Currently, Palmer Bus is relocating in there. They are already digging and getting off the ground here, and hopefully will be open for the upcoming school year. And then obviously, our emergency services building is in that area as well. That's been there for a couple of years. Brian, you want to go next slide? Across from that, we just got approval for, this is a new concept in Minnesota. Apparently it's, according to Sam, it's the first one of its kind, Independent Dealers United. It's going to comprise of several suites and bays for individual like auto business owners, whether they sell cars or they're mechanics. They're little suites. And then Sam is the person in the picture. He's the owner, and he rents out each individual suite to different auto dealers, or if they have mechanic bays or things like that. He currently has something on a very small scale just north of town that's been going really well. This will be obviously a much larger scale that will be opening here in spring of 2025. Next slide. In the last about year and a half to 2 years, we are growing like crazy. We've had tons of new businesses come into town. Just recently, Culver's opened up. We just had Herberts and Gerberts probably about 5-6 months ago. Maytag Laundry next to Culver's has been open for, I think, just under a year. Most of you probably know Sunken Ship Brewery has been here for a couple of years. Some of our smaller businesses that are downtown, Fabulous Finds, Go Savvy Social, Idle Hands Tattoo, Oak, Birch, and Willow. And then we have some new food places. So we have Adelaide's Taqueria. We have Chapala, which went into the old breakfast place. And I think they did a really nice job. They kept the sign, so everybody around here was pretty happy that they kind of kept the appearance of the old place. And then we had a couple new banks that came in. Blaze Credit Union moved over. And we also had, I don't think it's on here, but we have Minco here as well. Now on the residential side, we have, so the biggest need in the city of Princeton has been for many years, housing. We have a very, very large industrial and business park that houses very large manufacturing companies. We also have the hospital and we have the schools. One of the common concerns that we get that's raised to our groups and our council is we don't have housing for our employees. We don't have housing for teachers. We don't have housing to bring in, you know, line workers in our manufacturing plants, things like that. So our focus has been to get some housing. So currently we have 2 apartment complexes going up behind the 2 that are kind of across from the fairgrounds right in town here. So that'll be Rum River, two that are already there are Rum River Suites, and then the 2 that are going to go behind those 2 existing ones are called Princeton Residential Suites, all done by the same builder. And the one is just finishing up right now, and the 4th one will be starting here probably this year. So we'll have some apartment complexes coming into the city. We also have a twin home development in town called Fountain Place. I have a little schematic of what it looks like with the twin homes in there. And then one that hasn't gone through full approval yet, but it's on the board, but I can't really put it on here yet, but I can touch on it. It's going to be an extremely large residential project. Actually kind of goes with our age-friendly theme. It's going to be made up or comprised of different forms of housing for all levels of your life. So there'll be your townhomes or your, for your starting out, for the people starting out in life. There'll be twin homes for the, I'm retiring and I don't want to have maintenance. And then there'll be a senior living facility in it. So hopefully that continues through. It hasn't been up for final approval yet, but we are working through that process right now. Some of the things that we offer for, can I go next slide, Brian? Thanks. Some of the different financial assistance and incentive programs that we offer. We have a revolving loan fund. When I got here, our programs were, I don't know how you want to say this. We were reworking them, we'll say. So I'm still reworking the revolving loan fund program. The money that funds the revolving loan fund program comes from our MIF through the state, through deed. We do have several businesses that have taken advantage of MIF, so we do have funds in there. We just have to come up with a solid program for that. So we are working on that. We do have a small cities development program. This is actually an internal program with the city of Princeton. The funds came from an initial small cities development grant that we got years ago. The proceeds were kind of sitting in there, so we decided to continue on with the same format that the original program through the state was done. And so internally, we have an owner-occupied housing rehabilitation program and a commercial rehabilitation program. And the reason we thought this was important is because our town is older, so we do have a lot of buildings that could use some rehabilitation to keep the businesses in there or attract new businesses. This program is essentially a loan that turns into a grant. So the upfront loan is $25,000. If they own the property for 10 or more years, it will be forgiven. Then we have tax abatement, as you're probably all familiar with, and tax increment financing, which you're probably all familiar with. We actually have several different residential developments that are going on and commercial developments that either have been completed or are currently going on that have taken advantage of the tax increment financing. And we partner with deed quite frequently on different financing programs. We have a lot of businesses who take advantage of the Minnesota Investment Fund program or the Job Creation Fund program through deed. So that was short and sweet. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Quick question, Stacy. I didn't know if you had said it. What is the population of Princeton?
Yep. So Brian, you want to just go back to that very first slide, if you wouldn't mind? So our population in 2023 tipped over the 5,000 mark. So currently our population is 5,388.
Thank you. I thought that was a zip code.
Any other questions?
Any questions for Stacy? None? All right, well, thank you for your time. That was a great presentation and a lot of exciting stuff happening up in Princeton, which is good.
There is. Thank you very much for having me, and you guys have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. All right, on to 14, Local Housing Trust Fund Survey Discussion.
So out of our conversation last month of developing these surveys, we have developed surveys for the real estate agent side, builders, developers, and lenders and financial institutions. So really, when you look through the surveys, you saw 80% of it is very similar between the three surveys, just tweaked slightly for each of the groups. So we worked with individuals in each of these categories in the last month to try and tweak some of these questions, but a lot of this was pulled from the Housing Summit information that Jessica did. So a lot of these options that were here were options that are participants of the Housing Summit, when we did that, were items that they identified that they would like. So that's why we were able to kind of list out a fairly substantial list here, and we're asking them to select their top 5 and order them in preference. So that hopefully we have some that rise to the top by the end of the survey. And with your permission and approval, getting these surveys into SurveyMonkey and then start sending them out so that we can have the results by our February board meeting and be able to go through some of our survey results then to really start looking at what programs to start developing.
Okay. Well, we just got the information this morning, but looks pretty thorough to me. Do you need a motion on this, Dan, or just?
No, just consensus to send it out, is kind of our action plan.
Questions, changes, concerns on this, or can we give Brian the okay to push the button?
I would just note that on the real estate agents, the first question is, have you worked as a real estate agent or realtor in Sherburne County in the past? Realtor is trademarked, or like the realtor word. You might want to change that to say real estate agent or broker, because brokers obviously have a slightly different role, so that might encompass just for what it's worth, 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I absolutely appreciate that, because that's one we kind of went back and forth on a few times, and I think you're absolutely right. We'll kill the word realtor, add or broker, and that should open it up better. And would you rephrase it all that have you worked as in Sherburne County? That was hard to word too, because we know that a lot of them work outside of Sherburne County but do transactions within Sherburne County. So we thought about, have you ever done real estate transactions for real estate property, but that got a little bit wordy too.
I think it's fine as is. That would be my feedback, is because even if they're doing transactions in the county or working in the county, they may be working in the county with lenders. They may be showing properties. Even if you don't do a transaction, and you're showing properties, you're working for a buyer or a seller. Maybe you've done, maybe you've just done, not appraisals, but listing presentations. So I think that wording is simple and covers a lot.
We are getting a lot of feedback on these too, and a lot of folks, as soon as we hit go, we'll send this out through all the chambers, as well as through the list of real estate agents and developers, builders that we had from the previous summit, and most people say, yep, and they have their own trees to send it out to too, so we should get a pretty wide distribution of survey respondents, hopefully.
One question that I would consider asking on this is, this all covers the trust fund, and I think this is very thorough, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't have one question sort of at the end of the survey, or maybe at the beginning. The point of the survey is we're trying to increase workforce housing and retirement housing, right? Those are the 2 focuses. And so I'm wondering if we shouldn't ask the question, what's the one thing Sherburne County could do, in your opinion, to help increase housing in those 2 areas? And see if we get some additional thoughts that we haven't thought of.
Would you, on that note, modify the very last question to say that? Because we just ask a very general, do you have any other thoughts on what would bring, we used affordable housing, but maybe instead of affordable housing, because the affordable housing comes from our ordinance language and the state language, do we want to break that further into workforce and senior?
Well, what I would do, so when you phrase it as, are there any other thoughts, or something like that, most people are going to leave that blank. So I would phrase it a little more directly on, what is the one thing in your opinion we could do and I think we do want to be specific on workforce housing and retirement housing, because those are the 2 areas that came up with the greatest need through the housing study. So I think I would focus on those two. Otherwise, you may get a lot around, you know, mid-range housing and that sort of thing. But I would make it a very pointed question, but open-ended, so that we can see what kind of feedback we get.
Sounds good.
I think that's a great idea. And yeah, if we can remove affordable housing, because that's an objective term, obviously, I can't afford what Rand is. What's affordable, you know?
Well, and it's also a loaded term.
It is.
Yeah, people, so yeah, I agree with that.
Maybe on the builders, developers, rephrase that as your company built. Maybe put developed, because a lot of developers don't build. So, I don't know how you want to phrase that, but
Built or developed.
yeah, build or develop.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, guess you're good to go on that, Brian. Thank you.
Good.
Brings us to the economic development update, which was provided in your packet.
A lot more streamlined there. Kind of highlighted a few sections. We did have one company looking for an abatement request, so we're working with them on a potential planned expansion, sending out those surveys and continuing on the childcare side, leading that Sherburne County Advisory Group. So everything's tracking along pretty nicely.
Fantastic. Well, the word on the street is you're doing a great job. And that's from people you've been meeting with and feedback I've been getting from bumping into people. So.
You're talking to the right people.
All right, I guess that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting for today.
We got a lot of extra time. Do you mind if the cities just go around and maybe give an update on what they got?
I think that'd be great.
Sure. I assume, Brian, you were talking about an Elk River project?
Yep,
So
that's right.
we are having the same conversation. An established company in Elk River is looking about doubling their footprint, longer term plans to do even more work. So we're really excited to be working with them. We'll be transitioning a little bit from our construction focus of the highway project to now more of, I don't know if you want to call it tourism, or instead of getting through the highway, it's going to be get off the highway type things, as we just want all the traffic to not bypass us now that the road is completed.
Sounds like big ducks are a thing that might help.
Big ducks, yeah. Every 30,
Big duck up.
every 30 miles. Big duck.
There you go.
Caught me off guard, Dan, so I'm just gonna brainstorm real quick.
Quick question, has the businesses seen any decrease in activity since the new road is done, the highway? Or are they kind of getting back to where it was before? Or?
So that's an interesting question, and it's hard to answer partly because the project was done in phases. So every year of construction, we saw a dip somewhere, but the dip may have not occurred in all 3 years for the same business, just kind of depending on where it was, but it was quite noticeable. As you would think of proximity from a business to the actual work being done, and has rebounded, I think, quite nicely. Kind of a tidbit, if you will, like some businesses took it a lot harder than others, and others that we knew were projecting to not go as well actually outperformed their expectations, even though it was still a decline over a historical norm. But I think there was a lot of good communication and a lot of anticipation of it, that everyone was largely braced for it. So again, there was some hardship. We had talked at the city too about whether or not we would try to provide emergency loans or some sort of gap financing, and put some feelers out there, and really never got any feedback back on that. So we really didn't pursue it much stronger ourselves either.
I feel like people are certainly more willing to stop now that they have an easier, access on the 169 as opposed to sitting on a stoplight.
Well, I think like companies, like Little Caesars went out of business. But I think like Thurber's, I'd heard a rumor that Thurber's is just going to expand into that space.
Yeah.
So the void's being filled. I'm curious about the redevelopment of the movie theater. Have you heard anything on any development there? Any where are they at with starting to get some tenants in?
Yeah, they are very anxious to get some tenants in there. Naturally, the owner, Price Homes, is doing their showroom and some office and part of it. And then they've got really two sections that they can develop, the larger, I think it's about 50,000 feet, that probably is gonna be an open space type thing. And then 10 of the former theaters would continue to be bays. They're gradually ramping up some marketing efforts to get tenants in there. Josh and I have both had multiple conversations to see how we can help them. They are starting to do some preemptive work to make those more, to shorten the time frame from when a business is interested to being able to open by getting rid of the sloped floors. They're punching doors. I don't know if they've done any on the Freeport side, but on the back side, they're actually punching direct access doors out to the parking lot. But it has just, I think the real point of your question is it's been a real slow turn for them to try to find those tenants. So it's a very unique space. It's you know, it's gonna have internal and external access. And then I think it's about 2,500 feet each bay in there in the old theaters. So it's kind of also trying to find those people that are looking for, give or take, 2,500 square feet. They do have some opportunity to punch some holes between former theaters and double their space, or you know, even bigger if they wanted. But we're really gonna get behind them to see how we can. Hopefully, it's a domino effect there, where they get that first or second in there, and then there's some spin off from there.
Are they trying to take the bays to a vanilla shell and then get it to that point so that then tenants just have to do the finish out?
Yeah, and I don't think they're gonna do all 10 like that, but I think they wanna get at least 3 or 4 done, so they can turn them that way.
Okay.
Heritage Millwork, I think everyone's aware of, that was a TIF project of the city. They're a 110,000 square foot manufacturer. That project went very well so far, and I think they were targeting February to at least get some minimal operations started there. I don't know if that's quite gonna happen, but they will be operational here later this spring. While we're on the city, anything I'm missing, Josh, that you think we should hit?
Yeah, I got a few. Late November, we have a new public art piece that was installed at Furniture and Things Community Event Center. Our Beautification Public Art Committee worked through that process. We got a Central Minnesota Arts Board grant that helped fund that. So go take a look. It's beautiful stained glass, kind of abstract mosaic that kind of depicts the Mississippi River. Really cool piece. And then something else we've been doing is open for business reels, which we've just gone in with our camera crew to local businesses, get the owner or staff member in front of the camera, talk about their business. And then we post that on our economic development Facebook page and repost it on our city Facebook page for just kind of some free marketing for our businesses. Also is a good touch point for us to connect, you know, not really a BRE, but still a good connection point. And just build relationships. So that's been fun. We've filmed and posted about 6. We got another probably 6 in the chamber, and excited to keep that project going.
Is the concessions running at regular hours in there? I thought I heard a rumor that was going to be the case.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I believe they are, and you're familiar with the lounge that we put in there now.
Yeah.
And I think that one's gonna be more sporadic hours, but I believe they're trying to get the concession on a more reliable schedule. I do have one more, unfortunately it's a negative one, if folks aren't aware, but Elk River Machine, has anyone heard the news there? They're kind of a legacy company in Elk River tied to Cretex and now Ringer, but they shuttered operations, kind of in a step-by-step process, maybe starting November. So that property is just north of downtown. It's 14 acres. They have 4 buildings. If you know where, that will be the Fire Station 1 or the County Environmental Services building, just to the west of there is their property. The Eagles is in that area. but I don't remember the timing on the auction. They were doing an auction of their equipment, and then the building is for sale or lease. So we're trying to think through next steps there.
Do they own the land?
Yes. Unfortunately, you know, it affects people's positions. From what we've gathered, pretty much all those people were either picked up pretty quickly by other entities, or a couple were near retirement age and took that option. So in a fortunate sort of way, I don't think the impacts were as tough there as they could have been. But we'll see where that goes. There's both some strengths and weaknesses to the property, and we're kind of getting some feedback from industrial and the real estate community that it might not be as desirable of a property as we might have thought at first. So that'll be interesting too if we gathered there was interest quickly and kind of intensely, and that has all subsided. So we might be a little more engaged with them as a city to see what we can do to help get somebody in there. There is the possibility, like I said, it's 14 acres, and much of that was outdoor storage, which is kind of counter to the city's position for land use, having that much outdoor storage. So maybe potentially, you know, one or more of the buildings continues in its use, but we look at redevelopment opportunities for some of that extra land.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah. Josh had way more than I did, so. Becker continues, as I'm sure many of you hear, and probably wonder about the data center sites. Those are a major thing. We're still working through a lot of things on those. There's no timeline on them yet. The only bigger thing for us is, as you know, they've been closed on now, both of them, so they're no longer anonymous people. So there's the Amazon site, and then there's Microsoft, totaling about 650 acres of land, which is substantial. You may have noticed that one of the fences went up. That's a temporary construction fence. Again, no timeline on construction, but they just put that up as part of their insurability to make sure it's a secure, safe site. A couple other projects in the city. We recently had our EDA meeting on Monday. We talked about the feasibility study, which I'll touch on in a minute, the incubator feasibility. We also have the apartment projects that are going on in the city. So there's one of them opened this last fall, and then the other one's under construction with framing beginning. Actually, it began probably about a month or so ago, and they'll pick it up again. Saw a guy over there the other day that had to be the poor sucker to shovel the snow in -10, so he didn't look real happy about that. But those are going up. They anticipate that second one will be open probably by October of this upcoming year, 25. So in total, that's 104 units that Becker will have, which is good. We've needed rental housing for a long time. And the one that is currently open has, I think, a decent occupancy rate. A few months ago it was about 30%. I think it's higher than that now, and they'll probably see a demand increase now that it's the start of the year. So. Business-wise, we, Thousand Hills, which is the meat processing company that you probably heard some commercials on, they've expanded to a different building that's now just a big freezer that's on the corner of Highway 10 and Liberty there as you go across. They'll be probably redoing the loading docks as well there. Trying to think of some other things that we touched on. Andy, what did we touch on Monday? Bills. Oh, yeah, and Bills. So Bill's Foods, so G. Willikers, they finished in December, so that's a big, about 6,000, 7,000 square foot liquor store on the Bill's Family Foods property, which they're also renovating the interior of that. And then Bill's Superette, which is the gas station on the corner of Sherburne and 10 that you pass, which is the old Shell station. We're working on a redevelopment between that and the Beck's Pub property. So Pine Street, which is a street that kind of dissects those two, was council voted to vacate that. There's still some procedural things we have to work through on deeds and some, with these old plats, as you probably know, there's a number of title problems that come with that. This one luckily isn't so bad, but working through a couple of those things. But that'll be a really positive thing for that corner. If you've ever gone to that gas station, it can be kind of a rodeo sometimes, figuring out who's going where across the pavement. They'll put a buffer and vegetative strips and align certain ingress, egress from the site so that it makes it more safe. Gas station will be brand new and pushed back. One of the challenges with that comes with it is the post office, which they were, Grant Rademacher, who, part of Rademacher Companies who owns that, had given them opportunity to get a new space in his new building on the liquor store, which would have been a good fit because they need a loading bay and everything, and he has kind of the back entrance. That was several years ago, and nobody responded for several years, and then when he was ready to construct, there was a response, and he thought he had a path forward, and then no path forward. Somebody kind of kiboshed it. So we're trying to work through that to see where the post office goes. That's a big concern, I think, for the city. And we're not quite sure where the post office is at this point on putting that in. So they have a number of options. They could do a smaller space in the city, or they could redevelop a bigger space, or they'd move their carriers to Monticello. There's a number of things they're exploring. Hopefully we'll get it to where they can stay in the city, and because it'd be a pain if somebody has to move their P.O. box and go somewhere else to get it. One thing I will say, and this is now public knowledge, it's been recorded, Todd Potter purchased 118 acres south of his current property from Jeff Gongles. So the Gongles sold what they had owned for years. The city had purchased roughly 40 acres a while back from them and redeveloped it for industrial area. This 118 was recently purchased by Todd. So I don't know what his plans are as far as the whole site. It's a big plot of land, but Todd Potter's operation is pretty impressive, what he does, and they're continuing to expand their operations quickly and heavily. So anywhere from warehousing, so they have their warehouse and reload, to some of their big outside storage and their big, huge, puller cranes and equipment. So, and then the feasibility study, I'll touch on that. So with the county, when Jessica was here, we started that process and went through and did some joint work to apply to the Just Transition Fund. We received $150,000 initially to run ILT Academy cohorts, so to set scholarships for those. I think those have been going, and Brian, you've probably touched on those here as well. I think they've been going well. This is like the first huge cohort, 17, which is, I mean, when we started it out, it was minimal. It was only a few, and so this is the biggest one I think we've had to date.
This one doubles any other previous cohort.
So that's kind of cool.
And it's entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, entrepreneurs. So it's people, they apply, ILT screens them. If they have a good idea that they feel that they can take through, they take it through the cohort, which guides them through how to scale their business and present and get funding. These are people that they say they're targeted as, you wouldn't hit the venture capitalist where you're gonna make $1 billion in like, 4 or 5 years, but you could still have a good feasibility of a business opportunity and scale and grow that. And I think they've done a good job. They work in a number of areas, and it's picked up. The reason for that application, part of it was also we received technical assistance from the Just Transition Fund, and the Just Transition Fund is actually a philanthropic organization, so these are not public dollars. These are private philanthropic dollars that come through this organization. It's made up of about 5 or 6 different philanthropic organizations. We received $100,000 additional, so a total of $250,000. That technical assistance grant was used to do this incubator feasibility study, and that started back this summer, so it's been a really quick turnaround for something like this. Norspan, we went through when Jessica was here. She was part of the selection committee to determine, narrow it down to 3, and Norspan was selected as that consultant. They've gone through the process, held a number of outreach, surveys, funders roundtables. I know some people, Brian, were you involved in some of those, Dan? Yeah. And different stakeholders, city members, and those, there were a couple different things. One was the survey, which they got a bigger than expected response rate. They got about 80 something on the survey and on the incubator, which was, they expected 50, and 83 is pretty good for something like that, especially when people don't necessarily know what it is. So good response rate, some good feedback. The report is now in its final form. We presented it to our EDA on Monday. They gave a presentation back in December at about right before they released the report to the EDA. There was a few questions on this. It's a substantial dollar amount. And we'll share that report with you as well. It'll be before council next Tuesday. Invited Brian and Dan to attend if they wish, and invite you to attend if you want to hear that presentation from them as well, about what they found. So that's at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. A couple of things to touch on that. It's $4.4 million. It's a new construction. They assumed, one of the things that was asked for, and this is to give a breakdown of the costs, business management plan, how does this look going forward? For the city, one of the biggest things was we don't want to be in it in the long haul. Our EDA and our council have been pretty clear on that, because when you're in these for a long time, it takes a lot of money and staffing and resources. And so how do you maybe transition that to a nonprofit over time? I think the timeframes in the report are a little bit longer than we anticipated. So it's, yes, it remains to be seen who guides this forward, but it's a really, the report gives a lot of good information that we can utilize to present to other, companies and big stakeholders that may be willing to put a lot of dollars and cents behind something like this. They are valuable. A lot of the ones that you see are typically backed by somebody that has big pockets, that is wanting to put those resources into there. But it assumed about 93% grant funding would fund it, and then another 7% in equity and financing. And there's a business plan with that, but we'll share that report with you. But I wanted to invite you guys to that if you want to attend, and you're welcome to.
Great.
Did a lot of that come from the coal transition process?
Yeah, that was part of the reason for doing it, is when we applied to the JTF, so the JTF has a number of different ones. This was the Coal Communities Get Ready Challenge, and part of this was to tap into entrepreneurs in the area to give them somewhere to start and grow, because we don't have a lot of that anywhere. That, you've got somebody that starts at home, they have a great idea, but yet they move to the next step, and they have a conference room, do they have a secretary, do they have a space they can have a meeting, and a lot of them don't. And so that was the goal, is to try to tap into that, to try and help replace some of what's being lost, and maybe tap into some individuals that, if they're at the plant or other and they have a good idea, they could come and do that. So that was the goal. And the JTF awarded these grants to, I think, 8 to 10 communities was it in the nation. So it was pretty cool to get that. And again, it's valuable information.
I was gonna say, for the ILT side, we're starting to see some impact. One of the first cohorts had a group go through that, their company name is Talknician, and they had the idea of all of these people in the manufacturing industry are retiring out, and you're losing that subject matter expertise, and how to capture that. And so what they did is they developed a platform that uses AI, but you bring up the manual for that machine, but the people that are retiring go into that manual and actually add notes, and actually add how you actually operate it instead of what the manual says. And they kind of are doing that in a creative way. And I know they're actually, I just set them up with talks with Metalcraft, because Metalcraft was having that exact issue. And really, Talknician is about the only one that has something like this. So we are starting to see some of that impact start to wrap around. So that's good.
I would say to briefly touch on maybe housing, we're, like many communities, Becker is, Andy and I have had this conversation a number of times. We are thin on lots. Like, we're getting down to the bare surface. So we've put a lot of effort into how do we incentivize some things we own as the city, 212 acres that we're working heavily on to try and get developed as a city of residential property as well. So, and we have a few interests, a few different people that we're working with. We also have one that went through a preliminary plat last year for 38 lots. He recently closed on the property, so hopefully we'll see things move on that as well.
Get as much as Brent.
Yeah, there you go, Brian.
That'll work. Anybody else?
We met with the board on the Housing Trust Fund. Your support of the public hearing will be February 4th, so by the next time we meet, we should have that up and running. The grant period opens on February 12th, so we'll be able to apply for that extra $150,000, so the timing is really good.
Nice. All right, anybody have anything else? We still have a few minutes.
Just, that doesn't necessarily have to do with Sherburne County directly, but for anybody that didn't see it, Monticello nuclear plant got approved to operate through 2050, at least by the NRC. But, see how that operates with the state.
Ken is not, City of Big Lake has a new economic development director that'll be starting, I want to say, I think on the 28th of this month, Marie Flipson.
On Monday. This Monday.
Anything else you want to talk about in
No,
the
I
City of
think
Big
that
Lake? You're on the
covers it.
Economic Development Board.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's also a groundbreaking ceremony that's gonna be happening on Monday, the 20th at 2 o'clock at Premier Marine, and it's for the construction of a Christian school.
All right. Well, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Great meeting.
I think so.